Whether you grew up playing games on the Super Nintendo, N64, PS2, any of these consoles, I think many of us have this dream of one day attending a press conference like E3, events like PAX and all that stuff. And it's interesting because with the pandemic that happened in 2020, a lot of these events were either canceled or they became digital-only events. And even before that, a lot of things like the Nintendo Directs happened, and it begged the question of do we need these events? And now we are in a situation where we have the PS5, we have the Xbox Series, and we always have these rumors about, are we going to get a new Nintendo console? Is it going to be the Pro? The events are back in game, like E3 2021 is going to be taking place between June 12th through the 15th, 2021. And a lot of people are excited, but I'm not going to lie, I'm in the mindset that I think I'm kind of over this. So we're going to just react, maybe have this sad conversation as gamers that are maybe getting old and are not as interested about these things on another episode of A Cast of the Past, with a brand new episode available every Sunday and clips throughout the week at youtube.com.
Get excited. Ready for this depressing conversation. Get excited.
Yeah, welcome to the Getting Old cast, where we realize, maybe the things we loved are...
Get off my lawn. I don't need the digital video games, but... My name is Juan. I'm from Puerto Rico. You heard that man right there from London, Ontario, Keith Hamilton. Keith, ain't gonna lie. Even just before the pandemic, what was your hype level for something like E3? Where back in the day, we would actually skip college or take days off of work just to watch some of these events.
Oh yeah, up until a couple of years ago, I would take the day off to watch the big E3 day, because there was always that one day that had Microsoft, Sony, Ubisoft, all of them just kind of in one day. I would always take that off and then watch some of my favorite game sites, watch it. It's like a 3-layer thing.
Yeah.
I would watch people watch the press conference and comment on it, and that was one of my favorite things. But maybe it's because of the pandemic, maybe it's because of how things have changed over the last couple of years, and by change I mean both in the video game industry, how there's this new console generation that I haven't really latched onto yet, and how my own habits have gone in a different direction. If you're on the video version, look behind me, got a new problem everywhere around me, and it's called Lego.
Them Legos.
So I'm not feeling it yet for E3 in the same way that I used to.
Now, we do have from Boston, Massachusetts, Mr. Ryan McNulty. Now, Ryan, you're in an interesting scenario because you live in Boston. A lot of these events, just in general, from PAX to E3, you have these far more accessible than Keith and I would ever have. And, some of us have gone to PAX and all that stuff. But yeah, just before the pandemic, did you feel that hype for events like E3 and all the reveals?
It depends. My question is, hey, is Nintendo there? And if the answer is yes, then I'm probably interested. But otherwise, unless it's a specific franchise that I'm really interested in, then I don't really care. PAX, if I hear oh, Blizzard's going to announce something, I used to care when Blizzard announced something. Now, not so much. But, it really depends now. It's not just oh, I'm hyped to see any games. It really has to be specific to the things I know I'm interested in. And then, of course, if I hear buzz about something that's new that everyone's talking about, then it'll kind of catch my eye. But then, then again, I made that mistake with Cyberpunk, and we all saw how that turned out. So maybe I've just been burned a couple times that I just don't really care.
You still have the wounds. They haven't healed yet.
So it's something like PAX. The game announcements isn't really what's going to draw me to that event. It's more about kind of the panels.
The culture.
It's exactly. It's the culture. It's basically everything else surrounding it that would make me want to go. And E3, that's definitely, sure you could, I would not pass up the opportunity to go just to go, but it's definitely very much just kind of this press event that's really not for the fans, and it's more just for game journalists who want to report on what's going on, and pretty much everything that you can get out of E3 that would benefit a consumer would be just to watch the live streams.
Well, Ryan, what have I told you? That instead of going to E3, E3 in 2021 is coming to you. I'm actually just
Wait.
reading that from the website. I mean,
To me,
it's literally
like, are the press conferences happening in my house? Like, do I
Yeah.
need to? Make
I mean, you got to
dinner
dress
for
up, Keith.
people,
I don't
or
know what you're wearing below the shirt, but you got to put something on.
How many people are coming? I don't know if I have room.
What about
for that
snacks?
many.
I mean, E3 snacks and like press conference and those conventions have really bad food, so I guess it's okay.
It's tradition for me. Press conference day, I go get a big bag of ketchup chips and I
we
eat
could
the
just talk
hell
about
out of.
that in itself. Like, I would get hyped up. I just have like nachos, like all the stuff just in one sitting. But for context, so just because E3 is coming back, I mean, let's not forget E3 in itself has had a lot of controversy, right? From leaked, hacked information, accounts have been accessed, like a lot of stuff that people just did not like. But based on the website e3expo.com, they say wherever you are in 2021, E3 is coming to you, Ryan. So Ryan, Keith, everybody, like, get ready. You got to get dressed. This year's event will be a reimagined and hyper engaged. Woof. Okay, just talk about bullcrap media terms.
Just a bunch of buzzwords that mean nothing.
Tell me the hashtags I need to follow the conversation with.
Yeah. Hyper engaged digital experience, paving the way for so much more in 2022 and beyond. This says nothing. Realistically, okay, at least for me, I would love to get your feedback with this. What I loved about E3 really was the press conferences, but because you knew that you weren't the only person watching it at that moment. I feel like when it becomes a digital-only experience, sure, you do have a whole lot of people that watch that, but I feel like you lose the on-demand part of it. And at least for me, it's like, it's not nearly as cool as anymore, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it is, because the press conferences are still happening, right? Like, that's all but confirmed.
Yeah, it still says here with live press conferences and a 4-day-long video stream, E3 2021's virtual format gives you unprecedented access. Jeebus, here we go again. To the premier video game industry event. So obviously the format changes a little bit, but yeah.
To me, that's the important part, being able to see these presentations along with everybody else for like the first time and getting to just be excited for that little bit. Like whether the games pan out or they don't, there's that little moment of time where everybody's just like, whoa, that looks really cool. And that's fun for that moment, especially when there comes to the, like, it happens once or twice every E3 where there's that surprise that you just didn't see coming. Like for me, my favorite one from the last big one for me was the Mario Rabbids Nintendo Switch game, that weird when it was on stage and Ubisoft was showing off this nightmare dream of Rabbids and Mario shooting guns in an XCOM style game. That was the coolest thing when that was on the stage and everybody was going like, pardon my language, but what the F is this? Why is this a thing? Why does Mario have a gun? That was, I really enjoyed those moments, and I'm hoping that with the quote-unquote hyper digital experience, hyper engaged, whatever the hell buzzwords you just said, I hope that they don't lose that by trying to be this big digital experience.
Yeah, I don't know if they can do as many theatrics, because I don't know what it's going to look like, right? Is it going to be kind of like Nintendo Direct where it is all kind of digitally done and it's just in studio, or are they still going to do some sort of kind of like stage performance even though there's just no audience?
I imagine it's going to be just a bunch of directs.
Direct style
videos.
Let's not forget, even last year, even though we didn't get E3, we got the Game Awards, we got a lot of stuff. And look, when you have a lot of people, like especially with the pandemic, let's not forget some states are super open, but a lot of the developers are from outside the US, so it's not nearly as easy to pull them in. And it's also not as convenient for you to live stream yourself because what if the connection's crappy or something? So for the most part, it's probably going to be a lot of pre-recorded stuff, right? And I think that begs the question of Nintendo kind of got it too right, because even when Microsoft or Sony does any kind of video, people tend to compare to the format of the Direct, which is you kind of know what to expect. There's going to be a shadow or stealth drop, right? Something's going to be available starting tonight. Exactly. There's always the one more thing. You kind of get a couple of indie things and maybe one or two big reveals. And I think that format and the fact that it's short is good. For me, the stage, it's like, I ain't going to lie, I love the awkward stuff when stuff goes wrong in press conferences. Like, I live for those moments, right? So when it's all like very standard pre-recorded, you usually have like the person just looking at the camera. Hi, Keith. I'm very excited to share with you this brand new announcement. I'm like, oh, dude, you could just put the trailer
wow,
up.
Juan, let me grab my controller and check out this brand new game. Here we go.
Well, look forward to it. And that, it's like you even know the accent, right? I feel like when people talk into like Zoom or something, they develop
great
like a weird
graphics.
way of speaking.
How long did you spend working on these graphics, Juan? Tell me about how the development of this game started.
Ryan, are you excited for that if it happens?
I don't even know what to say.
Ryan's like, don't pull me into this stupid conversation.
I know what you're saying, though. There is that acting voice, like the presentation acting voice. I don't really care. I just want the games, man. Just show me the games. I hate when they bring out celebrities. I hate when they try to do a musical performance. I don't care. Just show me the games. That's all I care about.
So having said that, there's a lot of rumors that have been happening for years, but the fact that, it kind of sucks where this new generation, even though I really don't care about the PS5 and Series X, I don't think I'm going to get it anytime soon. It doesn't help that it happened during the pandemic when stock is short, and you're like, damn it, now we got to wait how many years before this loop, right? Like, even if I never got a console day one, it was always awesome to see the reveal and all of that happening. So now that we do have those consoles, there is that lingering question of like, what is Nintendo's take? Starting with Ryan, forget about the format, whether it's live, recorded, whatever. If the question was, what do you want from E3 2021 based on what we historically have gotten? Is there anything that comes to mind?
For Nintendo, I think they just need to come out with some big hitters, like some big non-remakes from the Wii U or ports or whatever. I think the problem with the Switch is that we got Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Animal Crossing, and then like what are the other big hitters? I feel like everything else has just been like ported up from the Wii U. And like I think it just needs more of its own identity instead of having, yes, I know there's a ton of indie games and everything, and that's great, but Nintendo lives and dies by the first party stuff. And I know.
Let me tell you about this little series that has consumed my life and my soul recently, called Monster Hunter, and how that is the biggest thing as far as I am concerned on the Nintendo Switch. And that's all I want to see. I've come to the conclusion that I'm just going to be a Monster Hunter person going forward. Just give me that.
I think
you can't say Nintendo doesn't have games, son. They've got the Monster Hunters.
It's true though. I think we have this tricky spot where you have the greatest hits, so it's like, Mario and anything tied to that. And then you have other games that, have a subjectively and objectively, become super popular, like Monster Hunter, with World, with like Rise.
Rise.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly, with Rise and all that stuff. But that only appeals to, even though it's obviously a very large audience, like I'm somebody that I've tried Monster Hunter. I really appreciate it. But I like me just like a good standard platformer. It's like for Nintendo, just give me comfort food, right? Like Nintendo is the McDonald's for me for gaming, which is I know what you have. Just give me a little bit more of that. Change a couple of things, and I do think that split fan base is definitely part of like the situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the end of the day, just give me Breath of the Wild 2. I expect that. I don't know. I think we'll definitely get something for Breath of the Wild 2. And then like if there's other Zelda stuff, that's going to be for like a 35th anniversary direct that will hopefully eventually happen. But that I expect that to be the big game. And then maybe we'll get something else. It's just like, it seems to me that, like I said, the Switch has just been, they've almost kind of taken advantage of the fact that nobody had the Wii U. My respects to you, Juan. But
But
like,
he's right.
It's Mario. We're still playing Mario Kart 8. What the hell's like? How old is this game now? Is this? Are we almost at 10 years old with this game?
We're
Like, give me a
getting there.
break. Like, give us a new Mario Kart. It's ridiculous how long we're expected. Like, you know, and I'd like to see another like big Mario title. Like, I'm talking like single player Mario title before the end of the Switch's lifespan. I just feel like they, you know, the Switch, there's a ton of great things to play, but I feel like Nintendo themselves just don't have enough like meat on the bone there, you know?
So jokes aside, I definitely don't disagree with you on that, but I kind of want to go back to a point you mentioned a few minutes ago, where when you were talking about Zelda, you said, oh, they might do this, but that's probably for a different direct or something like that. Do you think that's part of the reason why E3 just doesn't feel the same way it does anymore? Because it used to be like, okay, this is the week where everything's getting announced. You know what's coming out, or starting in July, you know what's coming out for the rest of the year and early next year. But now, because we get this steady flow of things like a Nintendo Direct, when we're anticipating things like a Zelda specific Direct, or a Mario, or an indie one, and how companies like Sony now have their state of plays, and EA's doing their own thing, and Capcom's doing one with Monster Hunter every other month. Like, is that where E3 kind of lost its step? And it makes me wonder, does it exist? Like, can it exist, this big behemoth of an event anymore?
It's not easy. I think it's gonna be a thing of the past eventually. I'm guessing, because it, from a business standpoint, it doesn't really. It's starting to not make as much sense anymore, right? Because the way that the internet is, and how you can get things trending and everything, it really, E3 honestly doesn't even. It starts to make less and less sense. And I think out of obligation, we're still doing it. But if you think about it, why would I announce my biggest games at E3 and maybe have it get lost in the shuffle
With everybody else?
when
Exactly.
when I could announce it, I don't know, in September when there's no competition, and own the news cycle of video games. So
And not just that,
yeah.
like, I think a lot of us, and it's ironic, and I think Nintendo has really broken the mold. How many times have people complained, oh, Nintendo, you should have like set a date for the announcement. Nintendo's usually like, yo, dog, I'm just releasing
It's
a
gonna be
trailer
out in
at
2
midnight.
weeks.
And it
Yeah.
freaking trends for like 3 days, which like breaks the whole concept that people are saying, oh, you should have marketed. It's like, look, I like to think Nintendo's got their publicity and marketing done right. And Nintendo can release a trailer right now about literally whatever, and it tends to do pretty well. So it's not even just a conversation about is E3 necessary, but it's this concept of like, hey, Keith, you can expect in July of every year, whether it's E3 or whatever the hell, June, July, whatever it is, you can kind of just like drop stuff. And it is, as a nostalgia gamer, right? It's like, oh, that sucks, right? Because it's not going to be a thing anymore. But I totally envision like the generation born in, let's say, 2000 onward, kind of going like, I just give a damn about the game. I don't really care how you announce it. Because a lot of the people that I know that play games are like, dude, I don't care how. I just want the game.
Yeah, and there's been so many instances, especially in recent memory, of things getting delayed because of certain things happening in the world, where they've hyped this thing 2 or 3 years ago, and it took 3 delays to get it out on time, where if you just waited a bit, you wouldn't have to have this extremely long preview cycle and this extremely long time of trying to keep hype up, because you just could have had it out later on. Like, I don't think that style exists the way it should anymore.
It's also, just kind of as a side note, it is very interesting. I've watched, a lot of people familiar, obviously, with Scott the Woz.
Yeah.
He does a lot of, he's done plenty of reviews on like different E3s, like looking at like 2018, 2019, etc. And it's amazing how much stuff from E3, either the stuff that they show is never in that game that comes out, or that game just straight up never comes out. And it happens a lot. Like a lot.
It's a lot. Well, because they're building this specific, like, fine-tuned thing to, like, a lot of the times when you see the previews for this game, like, it's like, imagine walking by a boutique shop and it looks really nice in through that window, but the rest of the place is still under construction and has demo walls all over the whole thing. Like, that's kind of what an E3 demo is. So of course none of it, like, very rarely ends up being parallel to the finished product.
And I think, Brian brought up Cyberpunk. I think, that game in itself is going to make a lot of developers and publishers very skeptical of, like, do I really want to show stuff ahead of time? They do need to, right? Because they have, like, their shareholders. They have, financial obligations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's kind of like, here's a really good example, talking about something that I would love to see. Two of them. One of them is WWE 2K22. They had... The feedback for 2K20 was
You're
so bad.
ready to be hurt again, aren't you?
Yeah, look, the odds of me buying the game are slim to none, but I'm curious because whether you're a wrestling fan or not, just to give a quick little context, the previous game that came out was 2020, so that came out in 2019. It did so bad that basically the company said, hey, we're taking a year off. So it'll be interesting to see. They've released some teasers and all that stuff, but think of the expectation that company has right now. It's like, we took a year off, so a lot of people are like, hey, I better see some freaking differences, right? And, the three of us are wrestling fans. Like, even though I stopped watching WWE, I love playing a good wrestling game, and I would love to play a new one, but every time I pop it in, I'm like, what is this crap? Who actually plays this? So that's one thing.
Yep.
Another thing is I would love to finally see a new GTA. And I know it seems like exactly Ryan's reaction sums it up. Like, hey, you're going to get GTA 5 2. It's just the game inverted or something. They split some stuff.
No, it's GTA. It's just more online stuff. That's where the money is. It's a different world.
It's still like $1 billion industry, that frickin' online game.
It is. And I do think
that's like almost it's almost like a whole nother conversation of how, like, I think we were just very spoiled when we were younger in, like, it's something I've talked about a few times, and just how long we had to wait in between releases of games, because I know there's so much that goes into creating a game, but just it's crazy how much longer we wait to get games. I mean, there's a billion memes about, we've got like 7 GTA games within like a 10-year span, and now it's been like 10 years since GTA 5's been out, and we haven't even gotten a teaser trailer for GTA 6.
Now we've just gotten 7 different versions of GTA 5.
If we could think about like Elder Scrolls
Hold
6,
by Skyrim.
We're still playing Skyrim over, 12 years later at this point. Well, I guess 10 years. It's 10 years. Still 10 years.
The point's
and
there.
No new Elder Scrolls. It's like, what happens? I know there's, like we said, there's a lot that goes into these games. They have to do a lot more detail, things like that. But I don't know. A lot of companies are just following the money, and it kind of hurts a lot of the single player games out there, unfortunately.
No, I do think that we are definitely the minority, just based on the way that I know the three of us play games. Me even being maybe the best case, where I've rarely ever bought DLC for games. Like, I can maybe pick out 5 games where I bought DLC, but time has shown I am the minority. It's like it is like microtransaction is the way to go. So sadly, from a business point, that's affected where now you get a game and you understand that, right? It's like you dedicated so many years for a game to come out, so they're going to squeeze every single dollar that they can out of you. But then you get to an E3 or something like that, and it's kind of like, do they take a risk with, like, take WWE as an example, right? Do they take a risk of just announcing a new one and maybe there's backlash, or do you go the GTA 5 route? And obviously that is the exception, not the rule, because I mean that's just a freaking empire at this point of just I could release GTA 6 or I could release that brand new pack for the thing that's still financially doing freaking awesome, or then you have something like Fortnite that doesn't cost anything, but how much money do people spend on the game? Which once again, when you go back to like an E3, it's like, do you really need all this stuff? And it's sad, right? Because I feel like, and I would love to get two things from Keith after this, which is your reaction to what I'm about to ask, and then if there's anything you're interested in. I feel I never felt more disconnected as a gamer now than I've ever had before. Like I feel like when I look at these events and everything, I'm like, I am definitely part of a different generation. I still love to play games. I still love to experience them. But these current generations and the business models, the way the games are presented, I'm like, dude, this isn't for me. Like, it's gotten to the point that I barely watch a lot of streams for the games that come out now because everything seems to be so much of like, oh, experience me for like the first year because I just want to get like the free to play model, or it's like the business component of gaming is so much in my face that I kind of just prefer to pop in an old game. So what do you think about that?
No, I totally agree with you, especially as games become more of a service than just like a standalone product for the reasons that Ryan mentioned earlier. You have all of these things that take so long to make and so much money has to get poured into them that you can't really just release something anymore and go, okay, on to the next one, because you need to be able to make your costs back through things like DLC, through games being services. That's something that's really taken off over the last couple of years with season passes and live service games that are just constantly getting updated, and just that model. You see more and more of that these days, and I check it out every now and then, but it's something that I just become less and less interested in. And maybe that's where old man yells at cloud comes in when it comes to video game stuff, but that's why I joked earlier that I've just like landed on the fact that going forward, I think I'm just gonna be the Monster Hunter guy, because that is a niche that kind of still checks those boxes for me.
Yeah.
And like
I'm the Zelda guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have fun with those games a lot, and they kind of hit that sweet middle ground for my play style where I enjoy them, and they still get updates every now and then. Like, there are new games coming out, and those games aren't like a, hey, this is what you get's what's in the box. There are new things being added to them constantly in the first few months that they're released. So for me, that's my sweet middle ground of games, and I'm happy to fall into my Monster Hunter niche.
I think that brings up a very deep question that maybe we can have this as a future episode, and I really want to get people's feedback, which is, how do you pull somebody from that cycle? Like, you're a very good example of a lot of gamers now, Keith, right? You're bringing a Monster Hunter, but you have your Dead by Daylight. You have games that people only play X game, right? Mm-hmm. So how does a company go like, man, I got E3 to pull you away for at least like a good month, right? And that's very challenging because as a gamer, you're an adult, right? You're not a kid figuring out which genres you like to play. It's like, no, I'm like the third, I'm the third person action guy. This fuels my need for all of this. You don't have hundreds of hours to play every week. What would take you in something like E3 to be like, I'm willing to take the time that I spend with Monster Hunter and invest it with something else? And yes, that's a very loaded question.
Yeah, it's an extremely loaded question. It all comes down to what you show, right? Like, I've been through enough of these to know to watch it with cautious optimism, but hey, if you have a game that has a good showing, and then when it comes out, it actually delivers on that showing and it gets good reviews, like if I'm interested in it, I'll give it a shot, but I just can't get behind the blind optimism anymore of, this looks cool, we need to go out and get it right now, or I need to pre-order it right now.
Oh, so it's I know what it would take for Keith. Just make a Monster Hunter clone starring the Mandalorian, and Keith is all in.
Dude, wow. Wow.
I
Keith is
almost
like,
swore there.
Yep.
That would be really cool. Or if
that's
you just remade, like if you RE2 remaked Metal Gear Solid, I would buy that in 30 seconds.
That's true. But Ryan brings up a
You're
really
not gonna say
powerful
it,
point.
Juan?
What?
You're not going to say it, Juan?
Outbreak?
No, I thought you were going to mention Twin Snakes, but
Oh,
never.
no. Yeah, I mean, look, like, Twin Snakes is basically the same game. I'm not even going to bring up something that's so obvious, right? So,
True.
People, it's a joke, okay? It's a joke. Especially I think for video, the sarcasm comes off a little more obvious. I think I got to put that up for audio, but Ryan, to bring you with the final question, and you brought up a really good point because you're definitely a Nintendo gamer, right? You're like a Zelda, Mario gamer. So I think much like the Monster Hunter part, it's like, what would it take you to actually break that cycle of be like, I'm willing to invest time on not one of these properties? Is there anything you would see in this E3 or other future events that would actually pull you away from that?
Definitely. I think if there is a interesting kind of single player game that I think the concept really interests me, then I will give it a shot. You know, I know there's Elden Ring they announced like 2 years ago, which was, I know it's from a franchise I like where it's like From Software, but it, you know, George R. R. Martin was participating in like helping with some of the world building and stories for it. So like that sounds like a single player experience I would love to play. But then, yeah, if it's something that's just the concept sounds interesting to me, and I'm really like mostly looking for a single player type game. It would, for a multiplayer game, it would have to be something that like really blew me away to want to get into it, because I think I just get too frustrated with competitive type of multiplayer games. But
yeah, that's not a part of you I want to know anymore.
Yeah,
That's
it wasn't good. It wasn't good. Yeah. So yeah, if it's got a good concept, because even like I know people did not like Death Stranding that much, but to me, even that seems like a game I want to play, because it's like it's a very detailed.
Death Stranding's weird, where people didn't like it, but now every time I see somebody talk about Death Stranding, they're like super into it now. So I don't know what happened.
I watched
there.
a review of it, and
it's
I was
a very
like,
specific niche.
Yeah, I watched a review of it, and I was like, I know people weren't like crazy about this game, but this kind of looks like amazing to me, and I kind of want to try it. So if like you throw something out there like that, I think I'm willing to give it a shot. If assuming I have the console. And, you know, if it is like a PS5 game, I'd probably have to wait for like reviews just to be like, okay, is it as good as everyone thinks it is? Is it as good as everyone's saying? Now I'll actually shell out the money for the console to get it. But yeah, if it's a PS4 game, I'll give it a shot if I think if it looks good. So I'm definitely open to it.
You know, I hope we see more of that really weird Pokemon game that got announced, late last year, Legends or something it was
I don't
called.
think that's going to happen, but...
Probably not.
Yeah,
that's a direct.
That's the one game where I'm like, 2022, could it actually be 2023, please? Because that looks like it's not even close to done.
Yeah, without a doubt. That's going to be another got announced a little too early game.
Game Freak is honestly after seeing how Pokemon Sword and Shield came out, like I know they know how to design like the back end of a game, but in terms of like graphics and stuff like that, that is the one company where I'm like, have they just been like cheating on their homework for the past like 20 years? Like what's going on?
Yeah, it's very sad, but I definitely think it's a conversation that post E3, even if they don't announce a lot, you know, maybe one of our shorter episodes, we can just give our reactions of like, okay, what did that look like? What does the landscape in gaming look like, you know, in the next couple of years? So everybody, you know, don't be shy and check out the Discord over at acasttothepast.com/Discord. You can also drop that 5-star rating. You know, really does help out. You know, we love doing this podcast where, you know, sometimes we'll have a more straight up video review or audio review of a specific game or movie. But every now and then we like to have these more laid back chats about topics that there's not a clear good or bad. It's more of just like, this is how we feel right now about this, right?
Tell me about your feelings, Juan.
Exactly. It's like, I love to share my feelings and emotions with everybody. Everybody, you know how emotional Keith can be, right? Can Keith be emotional, Ryan? I don't know.
What are feelings?
Keep bringing up twin snakes, and yeah.
I mean, true.
Yeah, that's right. That does make me feel things. Rage
sometimes in life,
emotion.
people just can't accept the fact that some things are just the same, if not even better. So people, thank you for watching and listening, and we will be back with another edition of a cast
to the
past.
If anything,
Look,
Ryan,
I understand that they took the game and put it in the engine of the arguably
Ryan, the
newer
cutscenes.
and
Forget
better
about what
game.
Keith was saying. Like, the cutscenes look so good. Hey, thanks for checking out the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing, and we are also available on podcast feeds. So search the name, click on the Sword and Stone, and enjoy a brand new episode every single Sunday.